Hey, welcome back to a little sequel to video 59. I thought I would walk the talk a little bit. I mentioned that you could do a few other things to add some features to the previous file, so I figured I should actually show you that. And what I wanted to do in the meantime was show you that the table features inside a PC makes things really easy to work with. With a Mac you had to actually type in the column headings. With a PC they appear in a little pick list. So what I've done is I added the ability to choose the variable. I just picked out a few to use as an example. I added the ability to put on a dash line, which was either a player average, a position average, or an overall average, and just move things around a bit. So the ideal scenario is that all of this stuff is hidden away so you don't actually see it. I've done it all on one page just so that it's easier to make the connections between the different steps in the process. So let's go ahead and check this stuff out. I'm just going to switch over to a file that is where we left up, and so we can just start from here. So the first thing that I want to be able to do is really simple. Drag that across. Next thing I want to be able to do is, if we look at these two examples that I did in video 59, the first one I did using the column headings, and because I was referencing a particular column I only had to put in a value for the row number. In the second example I didn't reference a specific column, I simply referenced the entire table, TBL database, and so therefore I had to give a reference value to both the row number and the column number. And so it's this particular example that we need to use to follow this next part. And so I'm just going to get rid of this particular info here. And that column there. I'm just going to try to keep this as tight as possible. Okay, so we've got pretty much a single variable chart in play. Now if we wanted to provide ourselves with some options in terms of picking from a list to plot a variable, then this is how we can do it. We're going to choose this cell here, K5, which currently says 5 meter speed. We want to turn that into a drop down box, and to do so I'm just going to pick out a selection of variables from the other page. And so what I've done is I went to the database page and I saw that body weight was in column I, which is column number 9. Yo-yo distance was column X, which is column 24, AC is column 29, and so on. And on the back of that I just made this little table here. You could make as many variables here as you like, it doesn't matter, but I just restricted it to 5 for the purposes of our little example. So I've just hidden the ribbon here, so I need to bring it back on again. So I want to make this a drop down box, so I'm going to click on data validation list, and now because my list is on the same page as where my drop down box is, I can just click on the cells and drag, and that will work. At the moment it doesn't interact with the chart because we haven't connected that part up yet, but we'll do that shortly. A better example than that data validation method just shown is to name this as a list. So I'm going to do so now. I'm going to call it list of drop down variables. What I choose doesn't actually matter too much. It's good to have it be something that you can easily remember when you're trying to build formulas later. So data validation, I'm just going to replace that with the named range that I just created. And the reason that that's a better option is that allows you to then really easily put it onto another page and have the drop down boxes still work just fine. Alright, so we're going well. Now what I want to do, again, I'd usually hide this away, but I'm going to do it in public view for now, simply because I want it to be seen to assist with the workings process. So I'm going to use a VLOOKUP. I want to look up the variable that we've just selected in our drop down list in this table and return the column number, which is right next to it, in column 2. So sum of skin folds is in column 18 of our database. And so what we have now is the ability to do that battleships method. So if I click on this cell here, it says 29, that's been hard coded in as a column number. But if I take that away and reference it to this cell, then what we have, I just lock that down, is if I drag this down, this is going to allow our chart to update. And so if I am picking any of these variables, they're going to plot. And one of the interesting new features of Excel 2013 is that kind of flash changing to charts. If you make a selection change, you can see the bars and charts moving, and that can look kind of cool if you're into that sort of thing. So we're already going pretty well. What I'm just going to do is make it clear that we can select something from this cell. So I'm just going to copy that, paste it in there, and I'm also going to just format paint that so that it's the same orange color that allows you to understand that something can be edited here. And I'm just going to pull this down to provide a little bit of space for our next part of the trick. And what we want to be able to do here is put in our averages. So in my example, I put player average, position average, and overall average. Alright, to get these player, position, and overall averages, we have to be a little bit clever, and the clever thing that I want to show is using the index function to highlight just a single column of a data set. It's easier with an example, so I've got one here. Simply got 6 games, home and away, goals for, goals against. Pretty simple. And if I want to get the sum of all the goals for, which basically equals that plus that plus that, then I can use a little trick to do so, and that trick will be applied as we go further up into our example. So I'm going to do sum if. What's the range that I'm looking at? My range is column 1 of the database. So I'm looking in column 1 of the database. If I hit F9, I can see all the values in column 1 of that database. If that equals home, then what I want to sum is column 2 of my database. And so I haven't specified anything for the row. I've just put a second comma there to go straight to the final variable of the index, which is the column number. And so this function here will tell us the number of goals for home. If I drag that down, update that to 52, so it's pointing to the variable away, then that works as well. If I drag this across, what I have to change is this 2 to a 3, because I now want to look in column 3 of our table, not column 2. And so there we go. Looking inside a table at a particular column is possible, so you can do things like SUMIFs and AVERAGEIFs when you don't necessarily in advance know the column number that the variable is going to be in. And so we know the column number. How do we know that? We calculated it up the top here. I'm just going to put a box around it. So we know body weight is in column 9, so that helps us create this particular answer. So the player average should be AVERAGEIF. Where is our range? TBL database. This is the beauty of a PC. As soon as I hit the square bracket, a big list of column headings is going to pop up. So we need to look in the column that contains the name, and if it equals our selected name, which is there, then what I want to have as my average range is TBL database. But because I only want to specify a single column of it, I'm going to put index in front of it, put a double comma, so we skip across the row variable, and I can just pick the column variable. And so that is the player average body weight. And I think that's pretty cool. What I'm going to do here is drag it down. We are going to have to edit these ones below it. So the position average we can't actually do yet, because we need to find out what position this particular player is in. So I'm just going to reorganize this top row here. And I want to find out what position Sarah Potter is by looking in the position column and matching Sarah Potter's name in the name column. Alright, so that tells us she is a defender. I can't help myself sometimes with this formatting. It helps me think when I do it as I'm going. Alright, so we've got defender here, and now we know we've got a value we can incorporate into our AVERAGEIF. So once again, I've got a list to choose from. So if position equals defender, then do an average of column 9. Looks pretty good to me. And now the overall average is even easier. I can just do an overall average of column 9. So here we are, there are our 3 options. So if I want to put those values on a chart now, what I'm going to do is create a name for that. Let's just call it list of reference values. That's better. Let's build that data validation. Okay, let's choose player average for now. Put some formatting on there. Let people know that they can select it. And maybe just down here next to it, I'll take advantage of our selection and create our data range that will end up applying to the chart. So we want to look up player average. In this table, put the answer from column 2, and what I need to do is, because there are 3 columns on this chart, I need 3 values to plot over the top of them. If there were 5 values, I'd need 5 values. So I just keep dragging this down until I had enough values. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to select data, I'm going to add a series, and I'm not going to give it a name because I don't want to have a label cluttering the chart up. But what I do want is the ability to right click, change series chart type, and a new feature in Excel 2013 asks you whether you want to do a combination chart, and it's got that example already highlighted, and that's exactly what I want to do. At the moment it's a clustered column, I want it to be a line. So series 1 column, series 2 a line, and if I format that data series a little bit less thick and dashed, starting to look quite nice, I think. So position average keeps changing. Alright, so now we've got a chart which is pretty interesting to work with. One of the problems when you have this kind of flexibility, you're dealing with a variable such as speed, which is down to 2 decimal places. So this chart axis on the left here, vertical axis, looks pretty appropriate, but when you choose yo-yo distance, for example, where you don't want any decimal places in the answer, it suddenly doesn't look so good. And so there's a bit of a downside when you have these charts. It doesn't always work perfectly. There are a few little tricks you can do to change that, but it's a whole lot of effort. What some people do is say, well, actually, why don't I get rid of that? And why don't I add some data labels? And I think that's a pretty good option. I think that can also give you problems because you've now got decimal places there, but there are ways to get around that. I'll show you quickly one of those ways. You can go down into custom number formats and muck around with these things here, and if you do so, it will start to be able to understand that when a value is a big number, to have no decimal places, when a value is a small number, to have 2 decimal places, and so on. Custom number formats are pretty cool if you can get them to work for you. But anyhow, that's enough from me. This is a I guess just an extension of video 59. We've now got the ability to move this part here to another sheet, and so a user can just select a person's name, select the test sets that they want to look at, choose their variable, and apply either an overall average, a position average, or a player average to give some reference to the data that they are looking at. So again, hopefully that's useful. Contrasting the different look and feel of PC versus Mac, I'm still really hoping that Excel for Mac 2014 isn't too far away. It's due, and if it is, my guess is it'll have some of the stuff built into it, some of the table referencing information. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.